Give me the keys. Sit in your car, shut up. And if you want to fucking step to me and puff in your chest out, something like that, then fine, I'll lock you up. We'll do that, shall we? I'll make something up. Public order. Screw up to a police officer. Shall I do that? Who are they going to believe, me or you? Who are they going to believe, me or you?
Across America, demonstrators are demanding their governors lift stay-at-home orders. A vast majority of states are in lockdown, restricting movements and shutting all but essential businesses.
You can't close America! You can't close America!
In New Hampshire, demonstrators want restrictions lifted immediately.
We're here to reopen our country. We need to bring our economy back up. It's killing businesses doing this.
I feel the government has taken advantage of a virus and overstated it, added to the numbers, and people are becoming afraid and scared.
In Ohio, protesters accuse state officials of violating their rights.
I'm protesting infringements on freedom of religion, a lot of our rights that have just been compromised by the stay-at-home order.
The demonstrations have put many governors under pressure, and some states like Texas will start lifting restrictions on Monday. It's a move welcomed by President Trump, who believes the lockdowns are hurting businesses. As demands grow to open the country for business, health experts are warning against it. They say mass testing should be in place before restrictions are lifted, but at this stage, the U.S. does not have the capacity to conduct large-scale tests. Philip Owira, TRT World.
This world is not what you think it is. This world is not what you think it is.
Good evening, YouTube. This is Our Future, and the power's with the people. Just want to let you know I am a respiratory therapist. Been doing this for 21 years. I've been kind of all over the place doing this. I wanted to show you our equipment room here. So we want to talk about COVID-19 for a few minutes. And the first thing I want to say is does it look like there's a ventilator shortage? There's not. Okay, as a matter of fact, we're running less ventilators right now than we would normally run. And that's because people are just staying home. They're not having elective surgeries. I want to talk about the numbers and the criteria that goes into what a COVID patient is, or a patient under investigation, what's also called a PUI. Basically, right now, and the way it has been the last couple of months, when they locked us down, is that any patient that came in with a respiratory problem was labeled COVID. Now, that doesn't matter if it's you got stage 4 lung cancer and pancreatitis and heart disease and liver failure and everything else. You're still, because you come in with breathing problems, you're labeled a COVID patient. Now, we have one lady that could do the testing at first that would go, those tests went to the CDC. Only one person was qualified to test that for the whole place. So several of these patients under investigations were never tested, and maybe they died or whatever, then they would die of COVID and not of stage 4 lung cancer or these things. This is clear that this is what's come out. Every single patient that needs one of our pieces of equipment here, any of this, if they need any of this stuff, okay, then they are a rule out COVID. And these tests have taken as long as 2 or 3 weeks to get back. We're finally getting what they claim. They've been claiming this for a month, but we're finally getting in-house testing. That's going to change the game, and I think that's what's going on at most places. And what that also means is that now you're going to see the numbers either go up or go down. And I would suspect we're going to see them spike up and then spike down real quick. And this is the reason for the number of deaths. So you have to recognize that if every single patient is under COVID investigation and dies, then that goes into a COVID death. And they're showing the numbers like a football game to scare you. They're showing you loading bodies into a tractor trailer to scare you. I've never in my career ever seen bodies loaded into a tractor trailer. It just doesn't happen. I wonder if those were even bodies. I really don't believe it. All of this stuff is fake. Okay? Look at our ventilators. And let's talk about ventilators and why there would be a shortage of ventilators. Well, this is non-invasive ventilation here, CPAP or BiPAP. This is a mask that gets strapped on you, and we can help you breathe with that. We're not allowed to use those. Okay? We're finally opening up to where we can use them a little bit, but for the most part, since COVID came out, they said absolutely not. That's going to cause the virus to spread all over the place by spraying aerosols everywhere, and so we can't use it. You have to let the patient crash and go straight to a ventilator. Okay? Traditionally, that's not the way we would treat a patient. We also have aerosolized medications, bronchodilators. We're not allowed to use those either. So everything that we would traditionally do, we're not allowed to do. Every patient that comes in, no matter what their history, is labeled a COVID under investigation. So if that patient dies, that becomes a COVID death. Okay? So there's a lot of weird things going on. When it comes to the testing itself, I've been looking at this for about a month now, but you can also look for yourself. They were open about it on CBS News the other night. They're not testing for a virus. Like if you get sick, you go to the hospital. Traditionally, you get tested for flu A and B. Flu A, by the way, is H1N1, the one that killed everybody in 2008. They'll test you for RSV. Those are actual viruses that they will test you for. This COVID test is different. They're testing for an RNA sequence from a reaction to the virus. And look this up. Please look it up. They're not testing for a virus. There's not one test that tests for a virus. Okay? Then they put it in a PCR. It's a PCR test, which means it amplifies it. So if there's any one little shred of that RNA sequence from a damaged cell in your lungs or in your nasal passage, you're going to test positive. Now, that can come from cancer, that can come from radiation, that can come from several things. So, and then you hear all this talk on the news about antibody therapy and all this other kind of stuff, people wanting to donate plasma, everything else, but they're not talking about the virus itself. They're not testing for the virus itself, and that's a big, big issue, because that makes you say, well, is this as infectious as they're telling us it is? Because if it was as infectious as they're telling us it is, these would all be in use and everybody would be dying, and we're not seeing that. Okay? This is unbelievable. Every bit of this has been created, okay? If you cannot use the non-invasive ventilation and have to go straight to this, the ventilator, that creates a ventilator shortage. But you also want to ask, why is Ford and GM in the business of making ventilators when we have plenty of companies that already make ventilators? You know, what kind of ventilator is it? What does it do? Who's going to train us on those ventilators? And, how's it going to be tested? And then, what is the cost per ventilator that the United States is paying Ford and GM for these products that really aren't obviously needed? So all this talk you hear on the news by the governors and everybody else, we're having shortages of ventilators. It's not true. It's not true. Okay, so how about healthcare workers? Yeah, we're getting 1 or 2 healthcare workers are coming up positive. And, you know, that would be expected, but I would actually expect a lot more healthcare workers to get sick and come up positive. And we've had some extreme contamination issues from patients that didn't show any symptoms, wasn't a patient under investigation, and then all of a sudden came up positive. And none of those healthcare workers came up positive, got sick, carried a fever, or anything else. Just to show you real quick, here's my PPE that I have to wear. Sorry. Here's my PPE that I have to wear. There's an N95 mask in here and a face shield. And, of course, we got some gowns and stuff. But we're going wearing this for 5 shifts minimum before we can get a new one. All right. So I'm contaminating myself. Every time I put this N95 mask and the shield in this bag, it's contaminating. It's contaminating over and over and over again, and then I'm putting the mask on. Okay, I'm still here. I'm not sick, and nobody else is either, except with the exception of 1 or 2. If you look at the areas that these people are in, where the hot spots are, like such in Georgia's, Albany, and Atlanta, you really have to say, well, why are all these places happening in these condensed areas? Well, I truly believe this is something else that's causing this. All these patients have comorbidities. They're all older, the ones that are, you know, in life-threatening situations. And the mortality rate is really not that low. So if you actually look at what's going on compared to H1N1, H1N1 was a million times more scary than the COVID-19. When it comes to vaccination, you cannot vaccinate yourself really for a sinus infection. It's just not going to work. You can't vaccinate yourself for every little human element that there is. You know, people are going to get sick. What traditionally happens with viruses such as this, if this is a virus, and I'm not so sure it is, but you're going to have a real spike such as in SARS, Zika, H1N1. You're going to have a spike, and then it's going to lose its efficacy, and it's going to drop, and the mortality rate's going to drop. I mean, the people that get really sick is going to drop, you know, so you have this initial little bang, and then it drops off. That's what a virus normally does. I'm not completely convinced this is a virus, and I've been doing this a long time. Do your own homework, do your research, but the equipment should speak for itself. Does this warrant shutting down the country? Does this warrant $6 to $10 trillion in economic stimulus just for this country? Does this warrant all these things that are being put in place? I mean, does this warrant the trillions lost? Does this warrant locking everything up? Beaches, you know, hiking trails, tennis courts, bars, restaurants, pool halls, schools. Does this warrant this? I really don't think it does. Not even close. So y'all need to be asking some really hard questions here, and questioning your government, and questioning the people in charge, and also questioning your doctors, because the doctors believe this stuff just as much as everybody else does, but they're not looking at the real information. All they're doing is they're told something, and hey, guess what? They got lives, they got jobs, they got everything else you got plus some. They don't care. I mean, they do care, but they're not going to go look it up. They're not going to look up exactly what this test is. They're not going to look up that, hey, why aren't we getting these infection rates? You know, they look up the little things that they're told to look up, and that's it, just like anybody else would. Okay, so, you know, these questions really have to be asked. And then for the Trump supporters out there, I want to ask you something. Think about this for a minute. We're doing the same thing they're doing in France. We're doing the same thing they're doing in Italy. We're doing the same thing they're doing in the UK. So, does that mean Trump's really in charge of this whole thing? Because I really don't think he is. I think he's being told to do what he's doing, and that's the way it is. I mean, this is a deep state, Illuminati stuff, and this is the real deal. And they're shutting the world down. Okay? Y'all people really need to understand this. The world. Okay? And they're putting our kids and grandkids in severe debt that will never be paid off. And if you think of how many taxes you're paying now Can you imagine what our children and our grandchildren are going to have to pay for this scam? So please look up, do your homework, ask questions, look at our equipment room, ask, why can't we use this if we're not seeing the infections? You know, why can't we use this non-invasive equipment? Why are we having auto manufacturers make ventilators? Who's testing the ventilators? What kind of ventilator? Price per ventilator? All these things. The economic stimulus package. You know, is this going to be another corporate bailout where they, you know, give themselves $1 million bonuses while we starve? I bet you it will be.
Well, people in Toronto who plan to step outdoors for some fresh air have to be extra careful now. The city is clamping down on physical distancing measures in public parks and squares. We get the details from our Natalie Nanowski.
Police officers in Toronto are going to be a lot stricter when it comes to enforcing social distancing rules in the city. If you're caught standing closer than 2 meters away from someone who is outside of your household, you could be fined $1,000. Now, the move comes after Toronto's Mayor John Tory penned a letter to Toronto's police chief asking police officers to really crack down on those people who are not abiding by the new rules that were put in place last week. Toronto's mayor says that he's heard reports of people having bonfires on the beach or playing touch sports in the parks, so this is why he's cracking down.
This is a spontaneous video. I hadn't planned to make this, but I've got to do it right now while this anger is in me, because I'm fucking fired up right now. I've had to come out to the car to do this video because I don't want the kids to hear it in the house. We're confined in another groundhog fucking quarantine day under house arrest yet again for who knows how much longer, and people are just putting up with it. Another thing people are just putting up with is all these ridiculous restrictions that are in place in the stores. I've just had the unfortunate experience of having to go into the town centre for a couple of items that I needed, and it is a fucking madhouse down there. People are queuing outside all the shops, standing in line like meek, obedient slaves. Nobody's thinking to question it. Everyone's just obeying. You've got the gatekeepers that they're putting on the doors of all these stores telling you how many people can go in, where you've got to stand, how much distance you've got to leave from the next person. Half the people in the queue are wearing these stupid fucking face masks anyway. Like that's going to protect them from anything. And just look at what our lives have become. The only thing you can do now is go out to the shop for essential supplies. You've had your freedom of movement taken away from you. You can't go to the pub if you choose, because they're not open. You can't go for a coffee in a cafe if you choose. You can't go into the countryside for a walk by the river. You can't go and sit on the beach. You can't go into the park. You can't go on holiday. You can't do any of these things. And people are just putting up with this. And the only thing that's left is going to the shops, which has become the highlight of many people's days, and look at the situation that we have to go through there. Standing in line like you're in a fucking concentration camp. Now, it would be one thing if all this was being done really for our own good, and if we had governments that truly care about us and want to keep us safe. But we know this isn't the case. It's never been the case. Your government doesn't care about you. They're there to control you. They, in turn, are controlled by higher powers that want to enslave, surveil, monitor, control, and dominate the entire human population. When are people going to wake up to this fact? There is enough evidence around now to prove that this is the case if people would only apply their free will to go and do this research for themselves. So the situation you have now, trying to get into these shops, standing behind these stupid bits of tape, people getting nervous when you get too close to them, going into the other aisle to walk past you, and nobody's objecting to it, everyone's just putting up with it. Look what our lives have become. All of this 1 month ago would have been unthinkable if you told people we would be living this way. If you told people they have to stand 2 meters away from you in the store. If you told people that only 4 people can be in a shop at any one given time. Nobody would have accepted it. Nobody would have believed it. Look how quickly this has become our regular daily experience. I'm not happy about this, and I seem to be in a minority because most people that I meet are just putting up with it, just going along with it. For as long as you cooperate with madness such as this, don't expect it to change, don't expect it to get lifted. We're being conditioned and entrained to accept this as the new normal, and I'm not happy about it, and I'm not putting up with it. I'm not happy with living this way. I've got too much self-respect, too much dignity, and too much intelligence to put up with this shit. Damn right I'm fired up right now. Damn right I'm mad about it. And other people should be mad about it as well. Why is it only a small minority that are showing any concern about our freedoms being taken away from us? And this madness, this insanity that we're being required to live in. I'm not putting up with this. I don't want my kids to have to grow up in a world like this. And the only way it's going to be prevented is if enough people get mad about it, stand up and say they're not having it anymore. All of this that's being done, the social distancing bollocks, all these fucking restrictions placed on us, all the lack of freedom that we now have to go about our business, natural God-given rights to freedom of movement, so long as we're causing no harm. It's all being taken away from us, and it's all being based on lies. There is no COVID-19 coronavirus that's going to kill you if you get 1.9 meters away from the next person in the store. A shitty, stupid mask over your face is not going to protect you because this virus is not what we're told it is. You cannot catch it from person to person. Listen to what medical professionals are telling you about this. Listen to what Andrew Kaufman this last week has been discussing in his interviews. Look it up. Get some alternative information. Don't just believe what liars, paedophiles and Satanists at the BBC and in government are telling you, because that's what they are, and they've got a proven track record of lying time and time again. Why would they be telling you the truth about this one? They're not. The COVID-19 situation is a provable lie. It's an excuse to bring in all kinds of draconian, totalitarian measures to fulfill the Agenda 2030 New World Order master plan. Most of the people watching this will be aware of it, but if you're not, you owe it to yourself and your families, your children, your grandchildren, to research this and get hip to what this is really all about. You're having your freedoms taken away from you, and most people seem to be just fine with it. They're standing in line, they're complying, they're not asking questions, they're not kicking up a fuss. Think about what is going on here. Where is sanity? Where is reason? Where is common sense? Where's dignity? Where's self-respect? Where's freedom? We have a right to live freely, and I don't take fucking kindly to having my freedoms taken away from me by the idiocy and the complacency and the complicity and the acquiescence of other people. It's unfortunate that people that are scared to death with all the lies that they've been fed by these paedophiles and Satanists who lie full-time for a living about what's really going on. It's unfortunate that the likes of us that can see through this and can actually apply a bit of critical thought and don't want to live this way and never consented to live in this way are having to be lumped in with everybody else, having our freedoms removed, having to live in this absolute insanity. I can't live like this. I'm not prepared to go on like this. This is not any kind of society that I belong to. And I know there's a lot of people that feel like me. Not enough. There needs to be more, because none of this is going to change until enough people get mad, until enough people stand up for their rights, until enough people stop complying with what's being asked of us, what's being demanded of us, and those demanding it have no right to take these things away from us. Where's this? This is no way to live. This is not life. This is not freedom. None of us deserve this. Why are we putting up with it? Why are we not getting mad? Why are people not kicking up a fuss? Why is it left to just a small minority of people like me and others to be voicing any kind of objection about this? It's straight fucking insanity, and I'm not having it. Who else is not having it? Who else has had enough? Who else is going to say no? Who else is going to resist? Who else is going to stop complying with this madness? All the morons out there, the COVID-idiots, that don't mind being enslaved, well, that's up to them. But it's not for me. I'm not taking this shit any longer. Who's with me on this? What are we going to do about it? Because this is not living.
On the 15th of April, new measures were introduced here in the capital, which is suffering the brunt of the coronavirus in Russia. Essentially, there's now a pass system, which means that you need a pass for everything, especially to travel to and from work. Now, the Moscow mayor today announced that that pass system will be extended until the 1st of May. He did also admit that the imposing of that pass system did have its teething issues at the very beginning. So the main issue that we saw there was the time that was needed for authorities to physically check each and every permit, which is why, as part of new measures starting from next Wednesday, the 22nd of April, everything will now be done electronically, automatically. So here in Moscow, there's a card called the Troika that you use to travel on the metro. From next Wednesday, you will have to link your travel permit to that Troika card. So essentially, if you don't do that, you put your card down, you're trying to get to work, the barriers just won't open and you won't be allowed to travel through. We also saw a build-up of cars, especially in the first 24 hours after the pass system was introduced. We had stories of people waiting for up to several hours as authorities very diligently checked through all their documents. That also is going to be made much more efficient because now cameras will be checking and scanning which cars have the right permits and which don't. Now, Sergei Sobyanin, that's the Moscow mayor, he recognized, of course, this is not fun for everyone. Self-isolation is causing financial and psychological distress to a lot of people, but that it is necessary and that it is bringing results. So on that note, he said that while the numbers are rising in Russia, they're actually not growing exponentially. And he actually compared Moscow to New York because they're cities of roughly the same population. And he said that so far here in Russia, we've managed to avoid the development of that American scenario.
So this is a letter to the future dated April 11th, 2020. The lamps are going out all over Europe. We shall not see them lit again in our lifetime. World War I conspirator Edward Grey. I do not write these words for my contemporaries. We are the damned. It is our lot now to watch as the lamp of liberty is extinguished, our burden to bear witness to the final flickering of the flame of freedom. No, I don't write these words for my peers. I write them for those yet to come. The inhabitants of that future dystopia whose birth pangs we are experiencing. The remnant of once free humanity who might, through some miracle I can't even imagine, come across this electronic message in a bottle. I know that it's almost hopeless, that the chance of these words surviving the coming internet purge are slim at best. That even if, against all odds, this message does wash up on your digital shores, the chance of these words being understood by you is even slimmer. Not because you don't understand English, but because you no longer use these words I'm writing. Freedom, humanity, individual. Still, I am here to record the end of an era, so I will press on in the hope against hope that someone, somewhere in that future digital dark age, will have eyes to see and ears to hear. The darkness is descending. Let there be no mistake, we all know this. We know what it means when 17 million Americans, a full 10% of the workforce, are added to the unemployment rolls in a mere 3 weeks. When they are joined by millions more newly unemployed ex-workers all around the globe. When modern-day bread lines stretch for miles in the heart of America's once proud cities. When the phony baloney fiat funny money debt rises to over 24 trillion and the Fed's Sovietization of the economy is complete. We know what it means when police start shooting people dead for not wearing a mask. When drones police quarantines from the sky and robots police lockdowns on the ground. When governments admit to tracking every movement of every citizen and begin internal checkpoints where digital immunity passports determine who may pass and who must stay in their home. We know what it means when billionaires start telling us that only their new experimental mRNA vaccines will be able to release us from this nightmare. When they threaten to mark us with invisible ink tattoos to ID the vaccinated. When they tell us that we will not be able to buy or sell or participate in the economy until we can prove our immunity. It means that the Corona world order has arrived. Oh, sure, some will still deny it. but they are only fooling themselves. They're afraid to admit that it's true. Many are still under the old conditioning that told them to bleat conspiracy theorist at anyone questioning authority. We have a name for that kind. Sheep. Or sometimes sheeple. The masses in our day are kept in the pen by jackbooted sheepdogs of the police state and led along by the political puppets who act as their shepherds. Occasionally a wise old-timer in the flock cottons onto the game, but the shepherd has only ever fleeced the flock, so he resigns himself to his fate. Why struggle? It's mostly pointless. Never did the sheeple suspect that someday the shepherds would lead them to the slaughter. It is a term of derision, of course, sheeple, but I like to think that it doesn't just speak to our stupidity, it speaks to a naivety, an innocence. We are trusting and gentle creatures by nature, peaceable, cooperative. That is nothing to be scorned. If it weren't for the predators in our midst, our failings would be counted as virtues. But I'm not here to say that. I'm here to say this. Resist, struggle, fight. You are not cogs in a machine, despite what the shepherds of your day may be telling you. You are free and beautiful human beings. You are not born under the authority of another. You choose how to live your life, not some bureaucrat, not some police robot, not some immunity checkpoint algorithm or QR code. You do not need permission to buy or to sell or to assemble or to speak your mind or to leave your home. You are not an asymptomatic carrier of whatever virus your misleaders are telling you to be afraid of. You do not have to shelter in place because someone in a white lab coat told you to. I want you to understand that once upon a time, the government didn't have the right to know where you were, who you were meeting with, what you were purchasing, and what you were doing 24/7. Hell, the government didn't even have the ability to do that. I need you to know that there was a time when you could leave your house when you wanted, buy and sell as you saw fit, meet your neighbors, rally, protest, party, live as free human beings were meant to live. What am I saying? These words, this language, it makes no sense to you, does it? These concepts don't exist in your time, do they? You go where you are told to go. You stay home when you are told to stay home. You shut up when you are told to shut up. You think what you are told to think. You don't think what you are told to not think. I can't blame you after all. You're trusting and naive and peaceful. Like a sheep. But oh, how I weep for what you have become. I tried to avert it. Please believe me. I really tried. But the lamp of liberty is being extinguished. And I am bearing witness. I don't know if history is something you study anymore, but in case it is not, UK Foreign Secretary Sir Edward Grey made his observation about the lamps going out all over Europe at the end of the so-called 12 days. According to the mainstream history books of our age, that was the period during the summer of 1914 that the British government was said to be trying to avert a world war. We are asked to believe that this prescient remark proved Grey to be a sage diplomat who was racked with grief over the pain and suffering that he sensed was about to be unleashed upon the world. But this is history by the winners of the worst kind. In truth, Grey was himself one of the conspirators who were actively working to bring about the First World War. What's more, the source of this quotation is in fact Grey himself. It was first recorded in Grey's own post-war memoir. Any tears he may have shed over the snuffing out of those lamps were crocodile tears, to be sure. One can well imagine that the history books of your era will record that Bill Gates made a similarly portentous remark at the onset of this corona crisis. Gazing out the window of his $127.5 million, 66,000 square foot Xanadu 2.0 mansion in Washington state, the then epicenter of the US outbreak, Gates's post-coronavirus memoir will no doubt tell us that he remarked to an underling, "The lights are going out all across the globe. We shall not see them lit again in our lifetime." But his memoir will no doubt fail to inform us that he was smirking as he said it. To my children, or my children's children, or whatever remnants of once free humanity happens to unearth these words in that godforsaken future we are all goose-stepping into. I'm sorry. I failed you. We all failed you. But remember this. As long as the blood of your forebears flows through your veins, the lamp of human freedom shall not be extinguished forever. Let it shine, dear sheep. Let it shine.
Or if you don't believe in conspiracy theories, just don't understand, how do you not believe in any conspiracy theories? I understand not all of them, not most of them, but you don't believe in any conspiracy theory? You just think the government's just batting 1,000 and telling us the whole truth?
May be the beginning of the end of our informed democracy.